I didn't know what I wanted to do, really. I knew I loved sport and I knew I loved Jesus. So I thought, well, maybe there's a sport and religion PhD program out there somewhere.
Gold. There's gold. I'm getting my golden doctorate, Ben.
Here we go. My doctor is getting his golden doctorate. Season 4, guys. Hello and welcome. We're back with another episode, and today we're helping Mad Dog get his doctorate. By the end of Season 4, he'll be getting it. We're actually bringing on another doctor, right? We had a doctor to finish Season 3. We're now dropping another doctor in Season 4. Who we got coming in, Mad Dog?
We have Dr. Chad Carlson. He is a professor teaching at Hope College, not university. He serves as professor of kinesiology,
which means
movement, body, muscle, bone. I'm not even sure all the things it covers, but he does it. I know that. Director of the Character Hub at the university. He's also the co-founder of a conference and movement called Sport, Faith, Life. Author of many books, which you, I'm sure, will ask him about, being the bookworm that you are. He's married with 2 children. Wow. Growing up children, in fact. And he lives in Western Michigan, which is just across Lake Michigan. You probably waved to him that day when we were at the shores of Lake Michigan.
Nice. What a resume. I tell you, someone who's like a thinker, someone who's a practitioner, someone who, is in the world of academia and education, but then also he's been a coach himself, and also family guy, but a guy who loves sport and faith and bringing these things together. And I'm interested today thinking about just some of those things, maybe the deeper topics, right, around culture, around history of sport, and how does that affect us as Christians? And I think this is some really, really important stuff. So stay with the conversation, because I think it's going to be worthwhile. Maybe get your notepad out and maybe even get some of his books, because I think what we're going to talk about, maybe you want to go deeper and explore some of these things as well, right, Mad Dog? So I'm excited. I've got my notepad ready. You got your notepad ready to become a doctor?
I am. I got my notes. I'm ready to do this, get my doctorate firmed up. I'm probably into the second year. I'm almost finished. But yeah, by any season, I'll be ready. And my wife has one question. She's from Calvin University, which is Calvin College when she was there. And now it's Calvin University. And he's from Hope College. There's something they do every year. And my wife had to want me to ask. So stick around. That's probably one of the last things I'll drop in there. See how he responds, Hope versus Calvin.
Oh, bit of rivalry, eh? Got to stick around for that. I'm excited for that. Well, let's bring him in, Mado. We've got quick fire and some deeper questions. Let's bring in this week's guest.
Dr. Chad Carlson is our next guest. Chad, welcome.
Hey, thanks, guys. So glad to be here.
Welcome. Last time, I think, we did see each other at Calvin at an event, but last time we spent any matter of time was in Ghana. Eating some good banku and tilapia, and I think you remember the cola nuts. You said
all of that, and something that was in a bag that we're supposed to eat. That potatoes or something. I don't remember.
I should take pictures every time people eat, because there's the strange impressions what they eat. Is there worms in here? No, it's not moving.
I know I ate ice cream out of a bag. I know that much.
Oh yeah, the fam. We had the fam glacé. Yeah, lovely. Yeah, Brian introduced him to that. That's her favorite. Well, so Ben doesn't know you. I mean, I kind of know you, but we got to get to know you. So we always start with a rapid fire, which means we ask an either or question, and whatever comes out of your mouth, that's the right answer. You can't say beef. You can't say both, and you can't say neither. Is that right, Ben?
You can't say A either.
I've got ChatGPT open right now.
Yeah.
Give me the answers.
You can't say beef either. All right. Here we go. You ready?
Yep.
Penn State football. Who's better, Franco Harris or Saquon Barkley?
Saquon Barkley. Sorry,
what?
I've only been a fan for a few years. That's why.
Oh man, Frank the Tank. Okay, Silver Lake. I see you like Silver Lake. So you like the sand dunes or swimming?
Swimming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ben, if you ever see what happens on the western side of Lake Michigan, it's like a desert sometimes. The sand dunes are incredible there.
Lovely. It is lovely. Yeah.
All right, Hope College. Who do you, of your famous alumni, Sufjan Stevens or Robert A. Schuller?
Yeah, Sufjan Stevens. I mean, there's an age thing there too, but I think a lot of people at Hope would say that. Okay. Actually,
I didn't know Robert actually was a Hope grad, but that's great.
Yep.
I knew he's from Western Michigan, but yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, Michigan fruit, cherries or apples?
Cherries. Apples are too available.
Too common. Okay. All right. Last one, Michigan weather, winters or summers?
Oh, I'm going to say winters. I do love both, but winter's like I get the opportunity to play pond hockey at night.
Oh,
Like I don't know if you
yeah.
guys, it just there's something really nostalgic about it. Like, a little bit of snow falling, it's
Yeah.
freezing, kids have been put to bed.
Just enough light to see the ice.
Well, we
Yeah.
bring in industrial
Oh, do
floodlights
you really?
to
Okay.
the pond behind my
Okay.
buddy's house, and it's
Yeah.
just, I mean, I love it. I
There
love
we
it.
go. There we go. Winter, Michigan winter. Ben's got to experience it.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. Bring in those floodlights. Yeah, got to play
Bring
that
those-
game.
like,
Wow.
How do
Oh,
you do,
that's fun.
Ben?
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, yeah, we always love a bit of rapid fire. You get a little bit, but I think we always like to go deeper, right? And I just love kind of the things you're passionate about, a bit of philosophy, history of sport, culture, and how that all blends together with faith. And of course, our podcast is called Already Won, where we think that there's a bigger victory than just sports victories. And going deeper, we're looking at more than goals. So our passage for this season is 1 Peter chapter 1, which talks about faith being refined so that it's worth more than gold. So first question, we're going to have a little bit to dig around your kind of calling a little bit. So obviously you've devoted a lot of your career and studying and teaching to things about sport, culture and faith, like we said before. But tell the listeners a little bit about how you kind of had your calling shaped as you kind of got into that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you say it in the past tense. I'm not sure. I mean, from day to day, I don't know what my calling is, I think at times, but it's definitely been in the direction of sports and education and Christianity. And so those have been pillars for me. I don't know that they've always been in the right priority, those three things, but sport tends to just dominate a lot of times. A lot of our emotions, our time, our energies, and yet I've tried to do it with a firm Christian foundation. So I've gotten to the point where studying it really feels like my calling most days, and it's what drives me. I just love reading and writing and teaching about sport. From philosophical, historical, culturally based perspectives. When I was a young adult, a long time ago, I I didn't know what I wanted to do really. I knew I loved sport and I knew I loved Jesus. And I was coaching college basketball at the time. I was just a few years from having graduated and was coaching at the place at Hope College here where I had played. And I just noticed that at the time, all of the coaches at Hope College had PhDs. And so I thought, all right, well, if I want to be a head coach, I guess I'm gonna have to get a PhD. Well, what do I get a PhD in? I don't know. I don't want to do lab work. I don't really like science. I wasn't a real motivated student either. I did fine in my classes, but I wasn't ever motivated intellectually. And so started looking at PhD programs just because I thought that's what people did if they wanted to work at colleges. And I thought I did because I wanted to coach college basketball. So I knew I loved Jesus and I knew I loved sports. So I thought, well, maybe there's a sport and religion PhD program out there somewhere, or sport and theology, or whatever else. And so I called one guy that had been doing that, emailed him, a guy out of North Carolina named Sherrill Hoffman, and he responded back very politely saying he was done taking on PhD students, but that I should look at a guy at Penn State named Scott Kretschmar, who is a sport philosopher and doesn't do sport and religion per se, but is a really strong Christian guy and a great role model and cares about people of character. And so I went out and visited and just really loved the program, but more than anything, just felt like this was a guy I could learn from. And so that's really brought me into the calling of sort of studying sport and studying Christianity and the intersection of the two together. That I don't know that I fell into it, but I knew that there was a guy that I really needed to follow. And besides Jesus Christ, that was a guy named Scott Kretschmar.
Yeah. So as you took these studies and you went back to Hope and started teaching and interacting with athletes and student athletes, and I mean, just your own experiences as well, your faith kind of gets refined by trial, sometimes bad, but hopefully mostly good, but different things happen. So many athletes, they face these sort of setbacks, these injuries, this failure, sometimes disappointment. From your studies, from your interaction with these athletes, how have you seen the role of faith provide hope and resilience during such trials?
I've been fortunate enough to not ever have really faced anything on my own personally. I've spent a lot of time participating in sports as an athlete and a coach, and I wouldn't say that there have been a whole lot of catastrophes that I've had to deal with or major injuries. But I will say that God puts people in our lives that can be really helpful to us. And so in the guidance that I give to athletes, just talking about, well, if you have options about to go to school A or school B, if you have opportunities to play for this coach or that coach, you really got to prioritize the people who are leading those programs, right? You really got to prioritize the coaches, the support network, because there's times when those people are going to be, speaking truth into your life, and you want to discern who you allow to do that for you. And a lot of times that happens in catastrophes, or traumatic experiences with sport, or negative experiences. Like I said, I haven't had a lot of those experiences, but as I look back on my career in sport, and then as I alluded to in my last answer, I've tried to prioritize being around people that I knew were good, faithful leaders, and allowed them to be the examples that I knew I'd have to follow in my life. And so when I had opportunities to choose who to play for, whose teams to be a part of, I wanted to prioritize the character and the faith of the people that were in leadership positions. And my wife and I have done the same thing with our teenage children and their sports. And so when they've had opportunities to play for different teams, we've tried to make decisions not based on the best team, but who's going to be the person that can speak the best truth and wisdom, Christ-like wisdom, into their lives.
Let's talk a little bit about your research then, and things that you've studied in a little bit more depth. I always love it when people can explain something as simple as possible. And I guess when we think about some of these things, right, we could go really deep on some of the things. But when it comes to the history of sport, you mentioned you love a little bit about that, and about studying culture as well. How do you see sport as both a reflection of society's values and as an opportunity for Christians to point towards something greater, like pointing towards Christ?
Historically, sport has at times been a reflection of cultural values, and sport has at times driven culture and cultural values. And the intersection of race and sport usually offers good examples of that, where that's happened both ways. And we look at, in the U.S. at least, the racial barrier busting baseball player, that's a mouthful, Jackie Robinson, who turned Major League Baseball, a professional baseball league in the U.S., from a white-only league to a segregated league. He was a black player, and he did that in 1947, which was 7 years before a foundational piece of legislation went through our country that made separate but equal schooling illegal. And it was 17 years before the Civil Rights Act in the U.S. So, we look there at like that. There's an example where sport can drive culture, right, related to race relations. And so, but there are other times that sport simply mirrors, society, culture. And I think we're at a moment in elite sports where issues of, human sexuality, transgender participation, sports entities are making decisions there that I think in some sense are reflecting the prominent or the prevailing social ideas in cultures where these decisions are residing and where they're having effect. And there are also opportunities for sport organizations to make decisions that might drive culture where the decisions based on those things that are prevailing in culture are not clear. And so we'll see how all that plays out. But I say that because in the world of sport and Christianity, I think we have an opportunity because sport has in the past driven cultural value systems and driven what we think and how we believe, there's an opportunity in sport for Christians to be able to be a part of some movements that can change things and change things for the better. Historically, the best example is this concept called muscular Christianity. Most modern sport in the Western world is built upon character foundations that come from Christianity and potentially accurate and appropriate Christian doctrine. So thinking about Jesus as a lion is not always the best theology, but certainly there are elements of our current sporting culture that still has some residue from 100 years ago, when muscular Christianity was kind of a movement where churches were connecting and using sport for its own purposes. And sport was saying, you know what, it's actually good that we have Christians participating in sport because we like how that feels. We like what's good about that. We like the behaviors that come from Christians. And so there was a lot of connection. I think a lot of what we see that's kind of embedded in sport from a character perspective comes from Christians. And so there's opportunities for potential revivals, right, of Christian character into the world of sport.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, being in across traveling around the world and participating with teams and different things and interacting with sports ministry people in different cultures like Ghana and West Africa, sometimes sports isn't accepted. Christians don't do sports, especially female Christians. And if you are a Christian, you limit the power of the Spirit. How do you see that as you do your conferences and you do your just basic research and different things? How do you see that interacting?
Yeah, I think one of the funnest things for me when I'm teaching about sport and culture in the U.S. to my mostly American students is to be able to open their eyes to what goes on around the world and some of the freedoms that they take for granted. Their ability to play sport. Title IX as a piece of legislation in the U.S. that guarantees, at least in school settings, that boys and girls will both have equal opportunities to participate. It's not a thing around the world, and so. I spent some time with a colleague in Asia that's doing sport ministry, and part of what I love is learning from him, learning about what he does and what he has access to and what he doesn't have access to. But the beautiful thing about his ministry is he's doing it in a country that has multiple different languages, multiple different cultures, multiple different media systems, governance systems. It's just kind of a bit of a hodgepodge of a nation in some ways. And he says the one thing that is the same, no matter the region in the country, no matter the language, no matter the culture, is sport. The love for sport, or at least an interest in playing, right? Not just participating in sport, but being at play and having sport be the one common vessel that allows us all to do that. So his ministry has sort of taken he's taking church leaders and encouraging them that actually sport is not sin. And I think a lot of people in their country believe that because of the prominence of particular athletes from other religions in that country and the bad behavior of prominent athletes. They just equate sport with sin because a lot of times it's major athletes who are sinful and doing so publicly. He's saying there's nothing in the Bible that says sport is sin. And in fact, this is the way to reach people because there's nothing inherently bad about sport. It's just gotten corrupted, just like any other human endeavor. So can we harness the play value of sport, right? The joy that comes with sport, especially at a local level, at a recreational level, harness that. And when the kids come into the church grounds just to participate in sport, they go back home and they tell their parents how much they enjoy it. They tell their families, and then they come back again, and maybe there's sprinkled in a little bit of, the story of David and Goliath, or the story of Elijah running down the mountain, or things like that. And it's just a little bit sprinkled in, and it's fun to see how sport is being used for Jesus Christ, at least in his situation. Now, like you mentioned, the gender issue, most of the people that are in his programs, if they're not young kids, are boys, especially at the upper levels. Just not safe for girls to be traveling on their own to sport in certain nations and in certain areas. And so there's a lot of room for growth and Christians can bring in, I think, particular goals and visions for what sport can look like for different people that are oftentimes excluded. And there's a real, I think, heavenly vision there that those doing sport ministry have the ability to work towards executing.
Yeah, and that's something we do. Is our groundwork is always theology of sports. Where in the Bible does it say sports is bad? And you're right, it doesn't.
Right.
Anything could be good and evil. It's how you use it. So it's a very important thing to lay, because it's often the leaders that prevent it from happening.
Yeah.
And so bringing it back to kind of the Western, specifically America, as you see universities now and even professional athletes, well, universities specifically with NIL deals, and then other universities, other athletes being in public relations, or are they in public relations, or should they be? What is their platform? Should they even have a platform? How far is too far? How small is too small? When they speak of their faith, and that you often see, I thank my Lord Jesus Christ, they hold up a trophy, but if they lost, in spirit of competition, would they do the same? I don't have any trophies, so I thank my Lord. How do you deal with how do you see that changing in athletes at Hope and across the U.S.?
Anytime I'm watching sports on TV and I see a post-game interview, I cringe. No matter what's going to be said, whether it's about Jesus Christ or not. I just think, in sport, our emotions are running so high that when we're asked, a microphone gets put in someone's face immediately after, giving your entire physical energies towards a particular pursuit. It's just hard to speak clearly or thoughtfully, I would say, with any kind of end goal in mind, a vision in mind that's healthy. So that would be the first thing that I would say to respond. I think the difficulty with NIL is, we're commodifying sport even more. Not that we haven't done this in the past, but that's part of the difficulty is there are so many opportunities for someone's life to be changed in a dramatic way through sport, positively. But so much of it is within a seedy system if you're thinking about elite levels of sports. And so we're bringing in more opportunity for young athletes to make money than in the past through NIL, name, image, and likeness opportunities. And college, the university model of sports in the United States, now universities can pay athletes directly also. And so that changes things. I think there's some positives that can come from that. I think there's some opportunities for people to be able to help support families in ways that they haven't in the past. And the money now that was originally diverted to, I think, a demographic of people that did not have need for extra money now can hopefully be shared with some people that would have greater need for that money. So I think there's some positive there, but you can tell based on my tone what I'm going to get at. And that is the question that most university coaches now are hearing from the athletes that they're trying to entice to come to their teams is, what do you have for me? Like, what's in it for me? And they're asking that about tangible resources now, right? How much money do you have for me? Because this other team is asking something different. And so as soon as this becomes an economic transaction, which it is now, what we're losing out on is the strength and the power of a coach to be able to transform an athlete's life, right? That becomes deprioritized. It becomes relegated. And I think that's the saddest thing in all of this. And fortunately for us at Hope College, we're playing in the third division of college athletics. So it's the lowest tier. We don't give athletic scholarships, which are, grants that cover tuition costs. We don't have that issue yet. Our student athletes are still largely coming to us because they know this is a place that is Christ-centered. It's a place that cares about their holistic growth, and our coaches fall in line with that. And in some cases are leading that. And I love that, but it won't be long. I mean, we're getting more and more questions about NIL every year, even at our lower level, as opposed to the bigger schools like the Penn States, which have been getting this for a few years now. We've been able to be sheltered, and we've been able to maintain the integrity of who we are and what we want our program to be, which is about having success, but more importantly, having transformational experiences for our student athletes as their ability to grow as thinkers and as people of Christ.
I love that. More important about those transformational experiences. Really powerful. Well, I love the way you've articulated yourself. That just really good about some big issues there. But in the midst of all the research and things that you've done, you've also co-founded a ministry as well on the side of in how you've had the time to do that is amazing. But it's called Sport, Faith, and Life. So tell us a little bit about the ministry and what that looks like.
Sport, Faith, Life really came from the second Global Congress on Sport and Christianity, which my colleague Brian Bolt at Calvin University and I hosted at his institution back in 2019. And it's sort of a movement of events every 3 years that are at the intersection of sport and Christianity. These are spaces for people that are studying, researching sport and Christianity, people who are doing sports ministry, people who are working in sport and are Christians, to all come together from their various industry sectors and have conversations about the work they're doing, the ideas that they're pursuing, the visions that they have, trying to help each other, trying to network. And so what we found is that these events every 3 years were really helpful spaces for the people that attended. And so what we're trying to do is just carry on the conversation in the 3 years in between each event, through the podcast we have, through our website, through making connections with people who are doing great work, starting new events, starting new programs, writing new books, sharing ideas. That's just kind of what we're doing. And so we've sort of, in the absence of any kind of leadership structure of the global congresses, we've kind of stepped into that space now. And so there's about 6 of us that shepherd these events from one triennial venue to the next. And so we've been really excited about the way this thing is growing. The first one was in 2016 at York St. John University in York, England. Second one, like I said, was in Grand Rapids, Michigan at Calvin University. The third one was 2022 at Ridley Hall at Cambridge University, Cambridge in England. And the one this past summer, 2022 or 2025, was at the Faith and Sports Institute of Truett Seminary at Baylor University in Waco, Texas. And the fifth one will be 2028, hosted by Athletes in Action Canada in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So the movement continues. This thing is growing. We're really excited about the ways that people are embracing this unusual model of bringing people together that are doing different things and having them talk together. And the main theme is that we're all at the intersection of sport and Christianity.
Very cool. I like that phrase, carrying on the conversation. I like that. I like that a lot. And I also love the fact that you've, in the midst of everything as well, you've co-authored so many different books. You've written a book, which I really would love to know a little bit more about, Making March Madness. So tell us a little bit. You've got a few also forthcoming books as well. So if anyone hasn't read that book, Making March Madness, just give us a little brief overview of that, and then maybe just share a little bit about those up and coming books as well.
Yeah, thanks for the prompt. I'll give you a cut of the royalties of any book sales that come from this. That Making March Madness is it brings together some of my other passions, that is college sport and basketball. And so it's looking at the way in which the unique American university ecosystem of sport created this monstrous annual basketball tournament that makes over $1 billion a year for the institutions that participate and those that don't participate, but it just brings in so much money. And it's actually become kind of this nexus for sports gambling, because it's this really clean tournament that's it's a few more than 64 teams, but it's built on the model of a 64 team bracket, which is 6 rounds, and it's just a one-off match in each round. And so there's no double leg or aggregate scoring or series. It's just one game, and anything can happen in one 40-minute college basketball game. So there's just been a lot of fascination around that event from my perspective. And I think our country that's really a prominent part of the annual sporting calendar. So I just write about the origins of that, what people came together, what cultural forces they had to fight in order to get this thing off the ground. The first event lost money. They lost $2,500 back in 1939. And in the last 10 years, this thing has made over $1.2 billion every year. So it's hard to imagine a time when this basketball tournament did not make money. But I'm looking at some of the economic forces, some of the social, cultural forces. There's not a lot about religion in that book, unfortunately, except that I uncovered in the 1940 tournament, the second annual event, actually there was a coalition of Christian pastors who, they didn't really picket, but filed some formal complaints that this event was going to have a game on a Sunday back in 1940 in May, and it was actually Easter weekend, Easter Sunday. And so they said, there's no way we should be doing this. And of course, any coalition of pastors would be powerless to stop Sunday games today in the U.S. But even 75 years ago, whenever 1940 was, they didn't have very much power then. So that was a book that came from kind of my early forays into sport history. More recently, coming up in December, a book coming out called College Sport Ethics, which I'm editing with a colleague in Arizona. And this is getting at some of the major issues surrounding college sport from an ethics perspective, thinking about economics and money, market forces, thinking a little bit about eligibility, participation, requirements for athletes, thinking a little bit about how universities support athletes and how they should support their well-being, thinking about level playing fields. Some universities spend so much more money on sports than others do. And so just to look at some ethical issues there. And then next year we'll have a multi-volume book coming out that I'm on the editorial team of called, it's a companion on the history of Christianity and sport, 19th century to the 21st century in Europe and North America. And that's been a fascinating project. We have contributions from authors in so many countries in Europe and Canada and the United States and the UK. And it's just really been amazing to read about some of the history and some of the ways in which, sport and Christianity have coupled and paired for positive, for good in the country, the ways in which the Vatican has kind of slowly embraced sport, so long as it has value for developing one's character or for the common good. But there are so many fascinating tales of what's gone on historically related to sport and Christianity in so many different countries in what we would consider to be the Western world.
So you said the encyclopedia of Christians?
Yeah, well, it feels a little bit like that. And we had some goals of doing that. In fact, the original goal of the lead co-editor was to do something from the entire world. And actually the publisher talked him out of that and said, there's no way, that's way too big a project. And he was right.
You're limited. I love it. Looking forward. So multi-volume, like several volumes or just two, or what are you thinking?
Yep, this will be 2 or 3 volumes for sure. We're not sure exactly which number, depending on some of the last contributions that are coming in from some Eastern European countries. So yeah, that's the to be determined part about all this.
I don't know about you, Carl, but I need a new bookshelf. I'm gonna have to. Those topics, though, really generally, like, they're fascinating and they're really important to talk about. So yeah, we need a bigger bookshelf, Carl.
Put it in the budget. Yeah. So, history of Christianity and sports coming out next year. Is that right? Early?
Yep,
2026.
Go
for it. We'll make sure we get the ad out when it comes out. So, speaking of history, before I ask my last question here, I know that you've either participated or partaked in it or witnessed or continue to witness the Reformed rivalry, Calvin Hope. You know, you got the Hope Flying Dutchman, the orange and blue versus, unfortunately, the Calvin Knights, who are maroon and gold in this season's gold. We're not sponsoring them, by the way. They're not sponsoring us either. So. Any stories from any controversies that you want to share on the Hope end of things? I've heard some on the Calvin end of things. My wife is a Calvin grad, but any on the Hope end that maybe still kind of ring a little sour in your?
Well, I don't know if you know this. So this will be my next book project. And it's really looking at the concept of rivalry from these two Christian schools that come from the same Calvinistic Reformed theological background. And they're the same group of immigrants that came from the Netherlands in the 1840s, and they lived in the same space, but they could not agree on these details of not really theology, but really morality, moral behavior, right? So we have this schism. I mean, that's the joke, is that if you have one Dutch American person, you have a Christian. If you have 2 Dutch American people, you have a church. And if you have 3 Dutch American people, you have a schism. Because it's a group that I'm a part of it. And it's just a catty group that can't agree on anything doctrinally. So there's been all these schisms, but the main 2 have led to denominations that have created Hope College and Calvin University, like you said. They started playing basketball against each other, men's basketball, in 1920.
1920, yeah.
And it wasn't 5 years before they stopped the rivalry. They put it on hiatus because nobody knows exactly what happened. That's what I'm researching right now. But a couple of administrators at Calvin said this was because there was conduct unbecoming of Christians from the spectators. And so they took a hiatus for 4 years till 1929. And then they went back for 6 years, and then they had to stop again for a while. And it was mostly because these people who are, essentially Puritans, but take their faith very, they're very devout Christians, and it's all about behavior and sort of the piety of one's behavior, and very moralistic. And yet they could not agree on, it just got really petty, this whole sports rivalry. And so that's what I'm exploring now. What can we learn about rivalry from these 2 groups that are the exact same? They're essentially siblings, and just have had this fascinating basketball rivalry in which, if you took the aggregate amount of points scored by each team over the history of the rivalry, they've played about 206, 207 times. The average score per game of the 2 teams is less than a quarter of a point different.
Yeah.
I mean, these 2 teams have been equivalent all throughout, and that's part of what makes a great rivalry. But part of it too is the pettiness of the people who are participating. So that's been fascinating to me, because they will be yelling at referees and at each other's throats on Saturday, but on Sunday they'll pass that communion plate through the pews of church to each other. It's almost as if all's good. Nothing happened on Saturday. So I'm exploring that. Thanks for bringing it up. You find the pump there, Kyle. That was great.
That sounds honestly fascinating, and thinking about generally how that there's lots of other schisms that happen across denominations in different places. So if you can talk about rivalry, which people understand, and how that links to this, I think that's an amazing way of. I think there'd be a lot of people wanting to read that, and you can explain that. It's very exciting.
I hope so. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, I hope so.
It's literally 30 minutes. The campuses are about 30 minutes apart from, maybe 40 minutes. a part of Western Michigan. You think it's only contained in Western Michigan. It's not. In fact, people just know it as the rivalry. They don't even add anything else in it. It's the rivalry. Everyone knows, and it's live streamed most times. I remember being in Nigeria in early 2000s. Hey, we're watching the rivalry tonight. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So people would live stream. Someone would get on their phone and it'd be anyways to watch it, anyways to see who wins.
Yep. So. Fascinating for two small schools.
Yeah, it is. So last question. So, our theme is more than gold. So you think about that, our faith and our worth is more in Christ is worth more than gold, more precious than gold. So what encouragement do you offer other leaders, athlete coaches, and even listeners today about living a legacy of faith, one that outlasts these medals, these trophies and records?
Yeah.
And rivalries.
That's right. And we have more trophies than Calvin, by the way. Actually we don't. That's the problem. Yeah, I would say this. I think sport has the opportunity to be so helpful for Christian ministries. And one of the best things that we can do as leaders in sport ministry spaces is not to deprioritize sport or not to say that sport is less important than what it is, because it feels in our experiences when we participate in sport, it feels important, and it is important. The problem is when we focus too much on the outcomes, the contesting outcomes, and not enough on what's going on within the athletes and how they're changing and growing. And we can see that morally and we can see that amorally. So we talk in one of my classes about the difference between the contest going on in a sport and the difference and then a test. So the contest is how well I'm doing relative to somebody else. Am I better than the other person, the other team, or am I worse than the other person, the other team? That seems to have very little value in Christian theology. I think we heard that at the Second Global Congress on Sport and Christianity, that there's not much value in proving that you're better than somebody else. There's no space in Jesus's world for that. So if we can focus on the testing elements, that is, how well am I doing? How well am I able to follow along the instructions from the coach? How well am I able to be a great teammate? How well am I able to develop in my skills? Am I showing that I'm improving in my skills? Because if I'm doing that, that's part of character development, right? I'm doing certain things from a discipline perspective. So there's a lot of good that comes from our focus on the development of the athlete through sport. Again, that's moral and non-moral. The problem is just when we focus too much on the outcome, right? The contesting outcome. And so I would offer that as guidance when we're thinking about more than gold. Obviously, Jesus Christ is more than gold, but there's so much within sport also that can lead to one having a better relationship with Jesus Christ that is also more than gold, more than the championships, the trophies, and the medals.
What an ending. Yeah, love that. There's a great way to finish. Yeah, great. To finish, yeah.
You guys have such a comfortable attitude here. This is like, I love that. I love that.
We could roast you. I mean, we don't want to, but no, we can't. We won't.
There'd be a few people in my family that would love to hear that.
Oh, yeah.
I love this series. That's a great idea. Terrific idea, you guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. And sorry it's taken 4 seasons to get you on board, but
we want to keep you for the gold.
That's right. See, I knew there was a lesson in there.
That's what Carl said. He said this season we're bringing in doctors, we're bringing in people, authors. This is what it is. So
yep. That sounds like Kyle. Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you so much. Honestly, I think I'm inspired. You've really researched a lot of stuff on a deep level. And the way you've articulated a lot of things, you've explained things really simply as well, and you've inspired me to read up on a little bit more stuff and turn light bulbs on a little bit to be like, actually, the thing about rivalry and stuff. I didn't think about that in sport and how that even applies to like denominations and stuff like that, and how in the history of sport and culture and this things, it's important that we actually research this and go a bit deeper. So you've inspired me to do that. I'm sure you've inspired others to do that as well. So keep going, and we'll look forward to those new books coming out in the future as well. I look forward to my new bookshelf, at least another shelf, at least. If my wife agrees that one.
Oh, thanks for saying all that, Ben. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
All right. See you guys.
The rivalry. There you go.
The rivalry. Yeah, I'd heard about this. Your wife had told me about this rivalry, and to hear him explain a bit more about that, fascinating stuff. And I was thinking about the rivalries around the world and stuff, and just thinking about researching that a little bit more. And really interesting. You enjoy it? I know. You kept him back for this season, right? But
go. It is interesting. It's always great. It's like you got so many ideas, and then this is an easy one. I mean, he's so knowledgeable, he's so learned, and he's just easy to talk to, and he explains things well. And I think even the whole fact of him doing the research on the rivalry, I mean, I don't think anyone's ever thought of that, to do the whole research and look into why did these two denominations from the same background split and then cause this sort of rivalry to happen. It's a good thing mostly, but there can be some tension, whatever. It'd be interesting to see, and maybe someone is listening, and maybe in your culture, sports is not allowed, or maybe there's a problem between two denominations. So, be your own little researcher, your own little academic, and find out why is that,
Well, what a call that is from the Mad Dog. Be your own researcher, be your own academic. No, I did. I mean, you talked about, like, it made me think about that. Like, I know the history of, even a lot of the football teams in this country were originally church teams after the Industrial Revolution. They were originally, after that happened, they started playing each other. It was churches that played each other. And then after the Industrial Revolution, obviously got bigger and stuff. They were able to travel. And then obviously teams were formed, leagues were formed, and it went from there. But it's fascinating. It did really inspire me to think more about my own culture and think about, researching some of that stuff and how, society and sport, they're connected together, and the history. And then, of course, how that affects Christianity and affects the church as well. So I think, what he spoke about there, the ministry is kind of formed to continue those conversations. I mean, you could take a lot of that stuff deeper. But as always, Mad Dog, I'm going to bring up some quotes. I mean, you did say,
here we go.
There's so many opportunities for revival in different places in sport. As a doctor who's researched these areas, he said there's so many opportunities for that. He said this sports ministry is an amazing opportunity to include those who are excluded. And I would say within sports, I think we obviously don't go after the top athletes and the top players, right? We work grassroots level, set up a church-centered sports ministry, and we hope that we can include people who are excluded, right? I mean, you've seen that in different places, right, around the world in sports fans, right?
I mean, and that's it. I mean, you have to be methodical, or you kind of be strategic to do this, to make sure you're looking out for the lost, and obviously the less privileged, but just making sure that everyone's kind of has an access to something, whether it's participating fully or helping with coaching or whatever. I think that's a great tool. It's a great expression of our faith as well.
Yeah, for sure. But he said, the importance of the impact, the power of sport to develop the athlete, and not in that holistic way, right? And just beyond the trophies, beyond the medals, beyond all that. And that's what we do. That's what we talk about, isn't it? That's why we're called Already Won. Talk about bigger victory, the spiritual transformation. He talks about the thing that he cares about more is those opportunities of learning and transformation, not about the other things. And that's what we want to do. We want to do that more. So that's inspired and encouraged me. And I hope anyone who's listening from our sports friends field will be inspired to continue to do that as well, right, Mad Dog? But I tell you what, we've had a doctor on. You said in the 4th season, you're closer to getting your doctorate? Or
I said that, didn't I? I mean, I'm getting there.
Cap and gown going on?
Cap and gown. Yeah, I'm ready.
And season finale, season 4.
Yeah,
up and down,
walking down the aisle.
You're going to give us a speech. Graduation speech.
Shaking hand through the internet, through the Wi-Fi.
It's this. Hey, but what are people got to do? They got to shake hands. What else are people got to do?
Besides dropping gold, people have got to be telling their friends, shaking hands with them, shaking friends with your friends' friends. Get your parents involved. I mean, they have gold somewhere. That gold that they're storing, their friends' gold. You can just grab it. Don't go stealing people's gold. Gold.
Steal their knowledge, steal their wisdom.
Knowledge, wisdom, right there, man. Worth more than gold. Tell everyone we've already won.